By the mid-1990s, Universal was ready to begin production of their long-gestating remake of King Kong. For a couple years now, they had been courting up-and-coming horror director Peter Jackson, an avid fan of the original film. Jackson, for his part, was eager to helm the project, partly because he did not trust anyone else to do the classic justice. Once again, however, the project came to a sudden halt, as Universal felt the next few years would be way too crowded with remakes of classic monster and monkey movies, such as Disney's Mighty Joe Young, Three-Star Godzilla, and Fox's Planet of the Apes. This last one Jackson was also approached to direct but passed, and so the millennium came to an end, with Universal's promised remake of Kong not an inch closer of becoming reality. In the background, meanwhile, the Kiwi director and his mates started production of their next project. Safe to say that by 2003, Peter Jackson was no longer just a promise, having settled himself as one of the hottest names in Hollywood. So not only Universal rushed to finally get production going, they also gave the guy white card to do as he pleased with the movie. And boy oh boy did he do it! Peter Jackson made a name for himself by doing things in excess, both aesthetically and narratively, be it shooting rows upon rows of footage that are left on the cutting floor, or coming up with excuses for using extensive digital effects. This made sense for The Lord of the Rings due to the sheer scope of the story and cast of characters, not to mention that the use of digital effects was somewhat restrained thanks to it still being limited by the technology of their time. Come the Lovely Bones and the Hobbit trilogy, however, and this approach started to do more harm than good, as these stories definitely did not call for it. But where does King Kong sit then? Because on one hand, the original movie has always been a prime example of the Hollywood blockbuster mentality, indulging in over-the-top set pieces carried by cutting-edge special effects. On the other hand, we have a story that is content doing the bare minimum to justify said set pieces. So while we couldn't expect any less from the 2005 remake than to try and push the envelope when it comes to brand new special effect techniques, one has to wonder who had the brilliant idea to making a flick that is almost twice as long as the original one. It is not like this runtime is earned, mind you. The worst offender has to be the first third of the story, no doubt about it, with the journey to Skull Island being padded by too many subplots used mostly to give characterization to the cast. Characterization that never goes anywhere, as the crew of the venture either died 2/3 into the flick, or is completely absent during the third act. It is commendable the filmmaker's effort to make you care for the characters before killing them in extremely violent ways, but the lack of payoff in most of these characters' arcs leave a very weird taste at the end, as you wonder what was even the point if this story is just about the Tiller Monkey and Anne. Oh yeah, those two. See, the increased amount of personality given to most characters may have been wasted on the crew of the venture and the male protagonist, who is totally not believable as an action hero. There is no way a theater writer, let alone one played by Adrian Brody, is that badass, but they did do a pretty good job in fleshing out the two other main characters. Anne is the most obvious improvement when compared to her predecessors, being much more rounded as a human being, not to mention cleverer and more resourceful when it comes to surviving the island. Sure, she just spends a good chunk of the movie hanging around, literally, waiting to be saved by Kong, but it would be dismissive to characterize this Anne as only a damsel in distress, especially during the climax, during which she willingly goes to meet the ape to calm him down. Kong himself is also a much more nuanced take on the character than ever before. If the 1933 incarnation of the monkey was your typical horror monster who killed people out of spite, and his 1976 self a mere victim of the circumstances, the 2005 version of Kong is more like a tragic monster. He's driven to violence by his situation, both in and out of the island, which completely doesn't justify most of the damage he does to the story. It's a nice middle spot that builds on what was already there in the original installment, while also adding to it the dynamic of his relationship with Anne, something that was kinda in the 1976 flick, but it's way less believable. And this is what sucks the most, to know the film is so full of good ideas that are dragged down by an uneven quality of their execution. To take these special effects as another obvious example, while the CGI and character work were, and arguably still are, some of the best around, the green screen on many of the scenes is unflattering to say the least, a fact that has been widely mocked in the years since the film's release. Then there's a third camp of things that, detrimental or not, are up to the viewer's taste. Things like trying to add an intellectual varnish to the story by superficially equating it to Heart of Darkness, or technically having all the rocks surrounding Skull Island resembling, well, skulls. Is the violence on display here way too disturbing to be entertaining? What? No? That's just me? Alright. What about Jack Black's Khazad-Dun, which... okay, this one I guess you all dislike. King Kong was critically acclaimed upon its release, but failed to garner the same response from audiences, who were much more mixed to it, and to this day the film holds the reputation of being the pretentious Kong flick in some circles. Personally, I think the movie holds up well despite all the flaws I mentioned before, with the first third holding it back the most. But once they get into the island, things really start moving and it becomes quite a ride, particularly the climax. It is also a pretty awesome love letter to the original, full of callbacks to the 1930 film and its history.
Faye's a size 4. Yes, she is, but she is doing a picture with RKO. Cooper, huh?
It is evident that this was a work of love, but it's just that 3 hours? In the end, the film made over $500 million on the box office and by all accounts made its budget back. But considering they were trailing after Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, wait, haven't I said that already? Anyway, in the years following, Jackson and company tried to make a prequel for the movie set during World War I. Universal, however, eventually sold the rights for the character, which turned out not to be in public domain at all, to Warner Bros., and the project was shelved. This leads to where we are today, with Kong in the hands of Legendary Pictures and now firmly established in a shared universe with Godzilla. More than enough proof that, even 90 years later, the character is still a massive crowd pleaser, like few others, and a quintessential pop culture icon, the kind which the mere mention of his name already evokes certain images and feelings on people. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Kong's admittedly uneven outing in the silver screen. It is always fun to contextualize a character's evolution through the years, especially one that was as molded by the passage of time as Kong. Next one is a Halloween special. Stay tuned.
Give me a break, give me a break.